Right, guys. Call is recorded, and we're also live on our Facebook group. So if you guys want to access the recording, it's going to be on our Facebook group, and we'll also put it on our health center. So if you guys have any questions, so just really quick introduction. My name is Sharad. I'm the owner and founder of REsimpli. I live in Toronto, Canada, but I invest in Northwest Indiana, right outside of Chicago. So if you guys are not familiar, it's practically a suburb of Chicago, but it's in Indiana, about 30 to 45 minutes outside of downtown Chicago. I used to live in Chicago. That's why I started investing in Northwest Indiana, and I still keep investing there. I've been living in Canada for about 2.5 years, and I haven't even been back to Indiana in last 2.5, 3 years since the start of COVID. But business is moving along. We have good systems and processes in place. My business is primarily now with the market shift, we're focusing more on turnkey business model. And I own a property management company also. I started out buying, when I first started investing back in 2010, I started buying rental properties for myself. So I still have all those rental properties. From there, I started doing some wholesaling, then fix and flip, and then now we do mix of fix and flip and turnkey properties, leaning more towards turnkey properties just because of the way market is. And we have a property management company, and then we get to have a little bit of income on the back end also when we sell a property. And I love doing turnkey property, which is much easier transaction than selling to a homeowner. We do about, this year is going to be a little bit slower for us, primarily just because I've been super busy with REsimpli. We'll do about 15, 20 deals this year, but typically we do about 30, 40 flips a year. So this year, as the market is shifting, that's also impacting. We buy our properties direct from seller marketing. As I mentioned in some of our previous calls, lately I've been focusing very heavily on PPC and online leads need to sell my house fast. And then we also are testing out a couple of other lead sources, and I'll share results once I feel like I'm getting some positive ROI from that. But so far, PPC and need to sell my house fast, both of them have been really good for us. And also HomeLight. HomeLight, we don't get too many leads from, but it's free. We only pay if you actually close on a property, if it doesn't cost you anything upfront. So there's no downside to having that in your marketing, scheme of things. On need to sell my house fast, we upped our budget from about 3,000 to 5,000 last month, but we'll see kind of, with the way market is, how that's going to work. And also going into the holiday season, it generally tends to slow down a little bit. We are going to be picking up direct mail in next month or so, and also cold calling once we roll out dialer within REsimpli. So those are a couple of other marketing channels we'll be adding to our to what we're doing right now. Hey Naveen, thanks for sharing the group. I appreciate it. Any questions on that, guys? Anything you want to, any other information I can add in? On the property management side, we manage about 165 to 175 units. And personally, I own about 50 units, and most of them are paid for free and clear. That was the intention from the beginning. I used to be an accountant, and I was really into personal finance, was a big follower of Dave Ramsey. So his whole mantra of, only buy stuff with cash. So I really bought into that. And it was right around the time when I started, I was working full time and just wanted to have, and it also was around the time like 2008, financial crisis that we had. So that had a big influence on my investing strategy. That's what I feel comfortable with. I use some of my equity in my rental properties as a line of credit to buy flip, but I paid that down with the market changing. I completely paid that down just to be very conservative. And, we're buying properties that we feel super, super confident with. On our fix and flip side, we have, on our investment side, we have 3 properties under contract. I think one, because of the title issue, might not close just because it looks like the husband is trying to sell the property without wife knowing about it. So that's why the husband was super, super eager to sell the property. And then when we took it to the title, it turns out the wife is also on the title. And I think he didn't realize, he thought he could just sell the property without and just keep all the money. So I don't think we'll be able to close that property. But a couple of others that we have, we feel pretty good about. Again, our focus moving forward is more towards turnkey properties in our market, staying about 125 to 150 price point. As the interest rate is going up, we still see investors interested in buying good cash flow properties. But just for reference, like previously, we could sell properties where, for example, if the monthly rent is $1,000 a month, we could sell some of those properties for 100,000, so roughly about 1% rule. But now that's definitely changing as the interest rate is going up. The investors want to see a little bit higher return. We have a 3-unit property that we will be selling. We showed it to an investor yesterday or last week. It'll rent for about $3,200 to $3,400, and we're looking to sell that for about $250,000 to $275,000. But other properties, we're definitely noticing the investors wanting a little bit higher return because of the interest rate going up. And we've also noticed, I mentioned on this call, we used to sell a lot of properties on roofstock.com. If you guys are not familiar, I would definitely recommend you check it out. Think of it as an MLS for turnkey investors looking to buy cash flow properties. I'll put a link right here. Roofstock. I'm going to put a link to the website in the chat if anybody wants to have a look at that. So a couple of neighborhoods where we used to sell property, so they were like a little bit C plus, D minus, C plus or D neighborhood, and now Roofstock has basically said that they're not listing any properties in those neighborhoods. We have a couple of properties in that area that we were going to sell on MLS or Roofstock as a backup, and then now they've said, just for the time being, they're not listing any properties on their platform that are in lower, not very good neighborhoods. So we'll probably we're going to end up renting those out. They'll rent for about $1,300 to $1,400 a month, and I'll probably keep them in my portfolio for about 6 months to a year. And then once market turns around, then we'll sell it back on Roofstock. So that's kind of what's going on in our market. We are noticing a little bit slowdown even on our online leads. It could be just temporary, but we've noticed like last week or so, the lead flow has slowed down a little bit in our market. So that's a little bit background on kind of what's going on in my market. Anybody has any questions or anything they want to share that they've noticed in their market? All right, moving on to some real estate news. I'm sure you guys watched it. So the number of pending homes that sold, those are mostly the homes that we as real estate investors deal in. These are pre-existing homes. So the number of sales went down 10% in just 1 month from August to September. So that's a pretty significant drop just in 1 month. The number of homes, if we had 100 homes sold in August, and then we only had 90 homes selling in September. These are pre-existing homes. And that number has dropped by over 30% from September of last year to September of this year. So that's a pretty significant drop. So there's 1/3 less homes selling this year or last month or September of 2022 compared to number of homes that sold September 2021. So if there were 100 homes selling in September 2021, there were only about less than 70 homes that sold in September 2022. So that's a pretty significant drop. And of course, interest rate is a huge influence on that. I'm going to share my screen and share some kind of interesting numbers with you guys. And just FYI, this is roofstock.com. It's a good way to kind of just get a little bit of sense of, another way to do ARV in a way based on what investors are paying for these houses. Again, these are not sold houses, but listed, just still gives a little bit of an idea. So for example, for properties in Indiana, so when we take Indianapolis South, we don't do anything in Indianapolis. So if I do, including Indianapolis, I'm not sure why it's including Indianapolis, but these are some of the neighborhoods. East Chicago, Michigan City is another one. We have a property under contract. Hammond, we have a property under contract. And then we have one in East Chicago where it's the husband is trying to sell the property without his wife knowing about it. But Derry is the neighborhood where Roofstock is no longer listing any property. So if you look at Roofstock has their own algorithm on based on kind of how they rate the neighborhood. So this is a 1-star neighborhood. I would agree it's a lower income neighborhood, but there was pretty strong demand because houses were still affordable with the market changing. Investors are not interested in buying in that neighborhood. So this is the neighborhood where we have a couple of houses on the market that we won't be able to sell on Roofstock anymore. But this is a good way. If you have a property under contract, this kind of gives you a little bit different exit option on if it's a viable option to sell on roofstock.com. Again, you don't pay anything upfront. You just only pay about 2 to 2.5%, I believe, when you sell the property. So it's a good way to just kind of get a sense of what other properties in the neighborhood are selling for to other investors. So we use this, we have somebody at Roofstock that we work with. So if you guys are not using this website, I highly recommend using it. It's been a great way to sell some properties for us. And some things I wanted to share with you guys, just sending some numbers before this call. And this is very, very interesting how much the monthly mortgage payment has gone up. So somebody who's looking to buy a house for $250,000, putting 20% down with a 30-year loan. If right now, if they're buying a house, again, I mean, this is 7%. I'm using 7%, but the interest rate is actually 7.25 or something, but I'm just going to use 7% for this purpose. So the monthly mortgage would be about $1,577, and we're in November right now. And then the same house, $250,000 house, somebody putting 20% down, if they were buying at the beginning of the year, their mortgage would be roughly $1,100. So that's almost a 50% increase in their mortgage since the beginning of the year. Again, I know some people who at the beginning of the year who got interest rate for even less than 3%. I know some people who got like 2.5% and 2.75%. But if you look at 3% at the beginning of the year and then 7% now, the monthly mortgage has gone up significantly. Like it's gone up about 45 to 50%. And just to kind of show you how that plays into somebody making, about $51,000 per year, and these are like rough numbers. I didn't include any maintenance expenses just for, the calculation purposes. Somebody making $51,000 at the beginning of the year, they could get a mortgage interest rate of 3%, and they could afford to buy a house of $328,000 with income being the same, assuming, same income level at 7% interest rate. The same household income would only afford $250,000 in purchase price. So that's a pretty significant drop. If you look at $328,000, it's dropped about almost $80,000, which is a pretty significant drop from somebody making $51,000, the house they could afford at the beginning of the year versus what they can afford now. So eventually, I think I don't think we've seen the complete slowdown. I think there's going to be some good opportunities in affordable housing. So again, somebody who could previously buy a house for about $300,000 to $350,000, that family still wants to own a house, but they cannot afford a $300,000 to $350,000 house anymore. But those houses are eventually going to come down a little bit in the price, and then they might not be able to get the exact house they would have gotten at the beginning of the year, but they'll get a pretty similar house because the house that was selling at the beginning of the year for $328,000, it's no longer selling for $328,000. Those prices eventually, the interest rate is going to put pressure on the home prices, and the home prices are going to come down. So I thought this was pretty interesting numbers to look at. Going from 3% to 7% right now. That's the bump of about 50%. And you see that on the based on how much a mortgage somebody can afford. Again, people are buying houses not based on a home price. The home price comes from how much mortgage payment they can afford, which comes from how much income they have. So put another way, somebody who's buying a house who could buy a $250,000 house and pay like $1,100 in mortgage for them to buy the same house with the same income. they're paying additional $500, roughly about $500 more in mortgage payment. So in terms of how much extra income they would need to have about $15,000 to $20,000 additional income per year in order to afford that house. And then this is somebody making about, 50,000. So they would need to get a significant bump in salary to be able to still afford the same house they could at the beginning of the year. So I know that's a lot of numbers, but I thought this was very, very interesting to look at how the mortgage payment gets affected going from 3% to 7%. And if you look at, based on somebody making 51,000, how much house they could afford at the beginning of the year, the only variable that I changed was interest rate, went from 3% to 7%. And it had a $80,000 drop on a $328,000 house that they could afford. So that's pretty significant drop, about 25% less house that they can afford. So any questions on this that I can answer for you guys? Do you rent them first and sell on Roofstock? That is making it. Yes. So Matthew has a question about selling properties on Roofstock. Yes. So we do rent them out. It's not, I don't believe it's a requirement to rent the property out, but it definitely helps if you rent the property out. And it also helps if you have most of the term left on your lease. So for example, if you rent a house on Jan 1st, and then if you try to sell it around that time, you'll have a lot more interest because investors who are buying that house will see that there's still about 10 to 11 months left on that lease. Versus if you rent the house at the beginning of the year, and then you're trying to sell it in November and investors see that there's only 2 or 3 months left on the lease, then it doesn't look as favorably. Or, if you're going to do that, if you're going to put it on Roofstock, I would, try to maximize the lease term because the investors who are buying these houses, they look at it as a positive that there's a significant period of lease term left on there. Is it a requirement to either be the owner or hold a license to? It is, you have to own the property. You don't have to be licensed to list on Roofstock. So Roofstock is just a marketplace where you can list your property. You don't have to be licensed. You're not the one listing the house. It's Roofstock. It's listing on their platform. You don't have to be licensed, but you have to be owner. You can, or at least I'm not aware of that you could wholesale a property on Roofstock. So every property that we've listed, we've owned it. We've owned the title on the property. So it hasn't been any issue for us, but I believe you have to be the owner of the property. And Mitchell has a question. Has anyone seen rent rates going up? Should we price our rents at top up? Oh yeah, Mitchell, great question. Yeah, so we have definitely seen more people looking to rent houses. So the house that I'm mentioning, we actually just showed it to somebody. We didn't even put it on the market. My property manager ended up finding it. We had the house listed on MLS, but we weren't getting much interest. So we decided to pull that house down and then showed the a couple, and then we're renting it for about $1,350 to $1,400. The same house we would have rented for about $1,200, 3-4 months ago. So definitely seeing more demand on the rental side. So as there's less people looking to or being able to afford to buy a house, but people are still looking to move. So naturally, that's going to put a little bit of pressure on the rent. We've definitely seen it in our market. And, it looks like what Jorge has mentioned, Brady, that they've also seen rent go up. Yeah, we've seen it definitely in our market. So that's why we're shifting more towards a turnkey model. So if I go back to this, so if I have a house for one of the houses that we have for $150,000, even at 7% interest, the monthly mortgage payment would be about let's see, I'm going to change this to somebody buying a house at this price point, typically is buying FHA. So I'm going to change this to actually less 7,500, about 5%. So the monthly mortgage on that house would be $1,100. But at least in our market, for that price point, the house would rent for about $1,400 to $1,500 a month. So that's the price point we feel really, really confident about, even though people might not be super, eager to buy that house right now. Also like higher interest rate, I think there's still a huge shock up going from 3% to 7%, in less than 12 months. But, and also going into the holiday season, it's going to, things are going to slow down a little bit. But if you're renting that house for $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 in some cases, so people who are looking to move, they would also consider that if the same house, $150,000 house, if they were to rent, they would pay actually more per month versus if they were to buy. And in a lot of cases, in our market, when somebody's buying a house at that price point, we're giving them a pretty significant down payment assistance. So they're actually coming out with a couple of $1,000s out of pocket to buy a house, which, in some cases can actually be less than what they would need in a couple of months of rent to rent a house versus to actually buy a house. So we'll see strong demand in this price point, but I think it's like next 2 to 4 months are going to go a bit slower, just going into the holiday season, and also the initial shock of interest rate going up. I think that's going to weigh on people's decision, but eventually we should see a strong demand at that price point. So. And Herman has a question: will Roofstock listed on MLS? Herman, Roofstock doesn't list it on MLS, so Roofstock just list the property on their platform. They have a buyer pool that the property goes out to, and then they basically selling your properties to high net worth individuals from all over the country, and in some cases overseas also, that people looking to buy houses that they can get for cash flow. So I don't believe they're listed on MLS. At least the properties that we've sold with them, they don't list it on MLS. The only thing they ask for is, I believe, about 30 to 45 days of exclusivity if you list your property with them. But every time we've listed with them, we've eventually ended up selling the property in less than 30 to 45 days. So it's been pretty quick turnaround for us. But again, things might change with how market is. I think everybody's just being a little bit of a conservative in their approach. Right. So there was a big update on the real estate market. Any questions? Anybody has any thoughts or anything that you guys are noticing shift in your market that you've seen that you want to share? If you guys want to unmute yourself, please feel free to do that. More than happy to kind of
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
How is the TV ads with Javier going?
TV ads with Javier, we're actually working with him. So the challenge for us, I mentioned in our call, was the challenge with TV ads is within a small market outside of Chicago. So for us, the challenge has been, if we want to advertise on radio or TV, we have to include our Chicago metropolitan area. So we fall within Chicago metropolitan area. So we're actually working with his team. They just rolled out a new program about, just having a little bit more targeted ads in just a small area. So we're working with his team on implementing that. So I'll let you know how that goes. But we have already bought 2 properties this year from TV ads. We made about, I don't remember, but about $70,000 to $75,000. So in that case, previous case, what we had done was Javier actually connected us with an investor in Chicago market, and they set up an IVR on their system. So anytime anybody called their TV ads number, they heard a message: hey, if you want to sell in Chicago, press 1. If you want to sell in Northwest Indiana, press 2. And then anybody that pressed 2, we would take the call and then manage it from there. But we're working with his team. We're in the process of working with his team to help us kind of set up our own TV ads just in our area, so we're not so reliant on another investor. Have you had any luck on TV ads, or are you considering it?
I've done TV ads, but I'm also in annuities. I'm a financial advisor, so I do it on Fox News for annuities. But I was interested because that's a nationwide channel, and I was told that you guys are doing more looking for people that have the antenna connection, not people that have the cable connection, because you get people who are poorer and they cut the cable. So you want to do the ads with like a local NBC, ABC, CBS. Is that what you're going to do?
Correct. I mean, like Tony and his team, they handle everything. So it's like a turnkey operation. Like you just tell them, you work with their team and they handle everything. But you are right. I mean, this is not something that, your ad is going to pop up on cable TV. So it's definitely targeting lower income demographic is what my understanding is. And then I believe you mentioned, like, you're looking at people that have, those TV antenna and not cable news but he did mention like your ads would also show up on, I don't remember, I have to go back to the call recording, but like Spotify or some other, or Hulu, sorry, that your ads would still show up on, like anybody that's watching on Hulu But it's definitely like somebody who's watching cable news. I don't believe your ads would show up. It's local, like ABC, Fox, CBS is what the TV ads would cover.
CBS and ABC?
I'm not sure. I can either connect you to Tony and his team, or I can reach out to them and find out. Yeah, we're in the process of connecting with them and like having their team help us kind of get that set up. But it's definitely local stations, and I'll see if I can pull up the recording that we did with him, where he went over that in a little bit detail. On like what stations are covered and whatnot.
And are you finding your pay-per-click is going down now in today's market, the cost per click?
I mean, it's definitely the lead flow has gone down for us, I would say, in the last couple of weeks. But I mean, it could also be, last week was like a Halloween week. So it could be a little bit of because of that. And as we go into the holiday season, it could also be, slow down because of that. But yeah, I would say in last week or two, it's definitely slower for us than it has been in the past. And same thing on Need to Sell My House Fast. Last month, I would say on average was a little bit slower than our typical month. I'm not sure if any of you guys have noticed the same trend with PPC.
And are you targeting? Are you targeting counties, states? How many states? How many zip codes? What are you targeting?
Just one county. We're just in Lake County, Indiana.
Does that make the click a lot more expensive?
I mean, with pay-per-click, we can control it a little bit because we can, for example, Gary is one of the cities where we're not really buying for next 2 to 4 months. With Need to Sell My House Fast, you buy the leads at the county level. So you don't have the choice of saying, hey, I want to buy the entire county except that one city. So unfortunately, you don't have, you don't get to control that with pay-per lead, like Need to Sell My House Fast, Fast Home Offers. However, with your PPC, you can control that, and then you can put some keywords, say negative keywords, so you don't get. You can do a little bit more targeted ads. You'll still get some leads coming in from cities that you don't want to buy, but it's a lot less than Need to Sell My House Fast or pay-per lead, because with pay-per lead you just buy the entire county. You don't have the choice of saying, I take the entire county, but just leave these cities, or I just want these cities. So you don't have the choice. But pay-per-click, you do. You can set up your campaign so you only focus on the cities that you want to buy houses in. But it's definitely, at least for now, I would say last month was a little bit slower for us than it has been in the past. Again, it could be an odd month, so it's kind of hard to say that, okay, we're noticing a trend at this point. Again, going into the winter months, I think things tend to be a little bit slower for us. In buying in Midwest, it gets a little bit colder. So that's what we've noticed. So we'll see, we'll monitor over the next 2 to 4 weeks and see if we notice anything and need to change anything in our marketing.
And have you tried Bing, or you're just doing AdWords?
We do Bing also.
How do you like Bing compared to AdWords?
Bing, what we noticed is the lead quantity would be less, but the lead quality would be higher, is what we've noticed. And you're spending less money on each click also. It costs a lot less to get a lead from Bing versus get a lead from Google AdWords. I mean, if you're doing Google AdWords, I would definitely
40% less, right?
I mean, it depends on the market. I would say it would be anywhere from like 25% plus. It really depends on the market. Again, we're in a very small market. So it's a small sample size, but I would say anywhere from 25 to like 35, 40%. Again, it depends on, some cities people would want to bid more, but if you're doing Bing in a small market, you would definitely have to expand the area that you're targeting. Otherwise, like you're not going to get any leads. So just for us to kind of set up our campaign properly, we included Chicago also, but then we're not buying anything in Chicago. If we get a decent lead, we know some investors in Chicago, so we'll kick that lead off to them. And if they close, then, we'll look into some sort of like a, profit split or something. But for us, yeah, I mean, if you're doing any sorts of online ads, I would definitely do Bing also. It's just so much less expensive. And then the quality of leads would generally, everything else being equal, would be a little bit higher on Bing than on Google. Again, the demographic, at least what we notice, people that are using Bing are, but older demographic, they have a Windows computer. They haven't changed the default search engine on their computer from Bing to Google. So that's where we see leads coming in. But I'll also tell you, surprisingly, we do Bing for REsimpli also. And then we notice we get a decent amount of traffic from Bing, which I was surprised.
You do Bing for what?
Bing for our REsimpli company also for marketing.
What is
and
that?
we notice that's the mastermind call that you're on.
Oh, right. You use that ads. You do that on because those are older demographics and people with Android, right? So you're not going to get inherited houses, for example, the kids normally.
I wouldn't say you would not, but yeah, the chances of that happening would be a lot less. We still have we track our traffic from Bing for our own marketing, and we notice we still have some younger demographic targeting. But again, if you're doing PPC, it just makes sense to do Bing also. Just one-time setup, and then you're getting leads coming in.
Have you deep dived into the numbers, and you can compare your cost per lead and cost per deal on each one of those platforms?
It would definitely be lower on Bing compared to, but we haven't bought anything from Bing this year, so I can't give you data for this year. Last year we bought a package of 3 houses from somebody that was living out of town, and we made decent money on it. But this year we haven't bought anything. But again, we're not spending much money on Bing. There's not much traffic in our market from Bing. But I can tell you, for recently the apps that we're running for Bing, those are positive so far.
What's your cost per lead on AdWords and cost per deal? Like, how many leads does it take you to get a deal?
Cost per lead is about, for me to sell my house fast, it's straight up $300 cost per lead. And I would say our cost per deal would be about $4,000 to $4,500 on that. And PPC, our cost per lead is lower, about $125 to $150. And then our cost per deal is also lower. It still takes us the same number of leads to close in a house.
How many leads from PPC does it take you to get a deal?
I would say about 15 to 20 on average. But again, this last few months has been a little bit odd month. So I can go back and I can look at the data and share it on the next call.
And you're not doing Facebook?
No, we're not doing Facebook.
And what about land?
Sorry, no, we're not doing it. Sorry, I want to make sure that we get into the topic that we have for today. More than happy to connect with you offline. If you want to send me an email on Sharad at REsimpli, and I can share some more information on that. But I want to make sure. Yep, yeah, no worries. Cool. All right, guys. Hey, so one other thing I want to share with you, I posted on our Facebook group. We're putting some last few minute touches on the course that we are putting together, just to help you guys kind of get super onboarded with REsimpli. We're trying to make it as in-depth as possible. So you have basic account setup, everything on list stacking. We'll continuously keep adding videos to this, everything with leads, disposition, operations, phone system. So it should be going live. We're working with Kajabi to put this course on there. So it should be going live by the end of the week on Monday. You guys should receive an email that the course is ready with the login instructions. So you can go in and you can start watching all the videos. You can have somebody in your team give access to, everybody on using REsimpli will get access to this. So you can have somebody on your team just start watching this, and it'll show, we'll break this whole thing down into different courses. So you can have somebody in your team have full access to it. It'll show the percentage of the course that they've completed. We'll cover every single thing, including like how to link up a bank account, how to enter earnest money deposit, how to put your marketing expenses, revenue, and everything. So we'll make it super, super in depth. And then we're working on this. So just wanted to share this with you. This should be going live in next by Monday. I would say you guys should all get an email on how to with your login instruction. Cool. All right. So moving on to today's topic on list stacking. All right. So I'd done a call about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I'll put a link to that. Let me see if I can quickly find a link to that video. So that'll be a good starting point if you guys haven't seen that. I'm going to put it in the chat. Yeah, so this is the one in-depth call that we did about 4 weeks ago, breaking down kind of how to use list stacking. We broke it down if you're using, starting from the least expensive marketing channel. If you were doing RVM, then you were building up to SMS, then you were doing cold calling, and then you were doing direct mail. how you would want to use it in your market, for your marketing. So if you haven't watched it, really good training video on breaking that down. Let me just look at some of these comments here really quick. Ben Arya now says rent's going down here in Arizona. That's interesting. Cool. And all right, so anybody who's not familiar with list stacking, it's essentially, on the back end, like how it's working, sort of like a super sophisticated Excel program, if I can say that. So what you're doing is, so imagine if you are buying your list from PropStream, you're buying your list from List Source, you're getting your list from Driving for Dollars. So the best example would be, let's say if you pull a list of absentee owners from PropStream, and then you have a list of 1,000 people, and then you get another list of 1,000 people from Driving for Dollars, and then you go down to your county and you get another list of 1,000 people from your county. So you have a total list of 3,000 people, 1,000 for absentee, Driving for Dollars, and probate list. So if you were not using any sort of Excel program or list stacking, what you would end up doing is you were doing SMS cold calling or direct mail, doesn't matter. What you would end up doing is you would end up sending, let's say for this purpose, we're saying you're doing direct mail. So what would happen is you would end up sending 1,000 direct mail pieces to your absentee list. You'd end up sending 1,000 direct mail pieces to your Driving for Dollar list, and you would end up spending 1,000 direct mail pieces to your probate list. Now you spend money on sending 3,000 direct mail pieces, but what list stacking does is it basically takes all the lists that you have from different sources, it puts them in a software, and then it tells you, okay, of the 1,000 people that you have in absentee, 1,000 in your Driving for Dollars, and 1,000 in your probate, there's actually an overlap of 500 people. So there's 500 people that are on that are common between your absentee, Driving for Dollars, and probate list. So now instead of sending 3,000 mail pieces, you're actually only just sending 2,000 mail pieces and still covering, everybody on your list. And even to take it a step further, if you had limited marketing budget, then what you would want to do is you would want to start out with just the 500 people that happen to be on all three of your lists. So these are 1,000 people that are on your absentee list, meaning they own a property that they don't live in. And these 500 people are also, found them on your Driving for Dollar list. So you notice some sort of distress, when you were driving around, and you notice some sort of signs of distress for their property. And then these 500 people are also going through probate. So when you're uploading a listing REsimpli or any platform, the way you want to think of list is, or at least that's how I like to think of it, each list is a motivation point. So if you're pulling a list, and when you're buying your list from, PropStream, List Source, or Driving for Dollars, each list, when you name it, it's essentially a motivation point. So when you pull a list from, let's say, PropStream for absentee, so that absentee is a pain point that somebody might have. That's a pain point you're naming, that, okay, absentee is a pain point. And then when you're Driving for Dollar, because you're only adding properties that might have some signs of distress, so that's another pain point. And when you're getting your list of probate from your county, that's another pain point. So essentially you are, compiling a list of all these properties with different lists, meaning different pain points. And then you're targeting people when you stack those lists. So if I go right here in my account, and I'm going to filter my list based on, let's say, somebody that's going to be on list count is more than 3. So if I do that, meaning I have these people, they happen to be on multiple lists. So somebody like this, they're on 6 different lists that I have, meaning they have, 6 points of motivation. So if I have limited marketing budget, I would want to go after people that have more motivation points versus somebody who's just on my absentee list, or just on my Driving for Dollar list, or just on my probate list. So you would want to start out with your stacked list, meaning people that are on multiple lists, meaning they have multiple motivation points. So you want to start with them. And then once you've reached your marketing and you have more marketing dollars left over, then you want to get into the next motivation point. So now you could either cover everybody that's left in your absentee, Driving for Dollars, and probate list, or you could choose, based on the data that you have, you might want to go after people on probate, because probate, leads would generally tend to be a little bit more motivated. Then you might want to go after Driving for Dollars because you've seen signs of distress. Then you might want to go into your absentee list. So you could do that, but I would start out with your stacked list of your motivated sellers, and then decide which marketing channel you want to reach them through. And then after that, decide which next list you want to go after. Yeah, so Donovan has a question. Did you say that, yes, Roofstock will let you list your houses even though you're not a realtor? So yeah, we list our houses all the time, and we don't have to be a licensed agent. So any questions on what we've covered so far on the list stacking part of it?
What about listing on investor list? What do you think of them?
I am not familiar with them. I'm not sure if anybody is using it. If somebody wants to jump in, I've never used this, so I can't comment on that. I'm not sure how it works, so I can't say anything and address that. Right. So in order for when you're uploading your list, what you want to do is you go into the property address, you want to click on, so you want to click right here. And then when you click on, let me choose a file, here, you can do this. So when you're uploading a file, you're going to notice these are the columns that you have in your spreadsheet. And this is how you're mapping it in REsimpli. So these are all the fields that you can map. So you have company name, first name, last name, property address, mailing address, phone information, email information, and then your list and tags. The property address is the only field that's required. And typically when you're buying a list from, your list source, PropStream, you would get the name, property address, and mailing address is available. So I would make sure you map everything. And once you map everything that you need to, and this is where you're adding it to an existing, either you're adding it to an existing list, or you're adding a new list right here. So if this was a new list that you pulled, meaning a new motivation point that you have, and you would create a new list and add it there. Otherwise, you would add it to one of these lists here. So for example, this was my, let's say, tax foreclosure. I would create a new list, meaning that I pulled this list specifically for tax foreclosure, and then I would add it to that list. And then this is where you're mapping it. For example, if you have a list of sold properties that you pulled from, either your MLS or PropStream, you don't want to market to those sold properties, then you would just select opt out all of these properties. Then you would just say yes, because you don't want to market to them. So you're opting these records out from any marketing that you have. And marked as return mail, this would be used if you send out direct mail and you get a bunch of return mails. Either you can put them all in an Excel sheet, upload them, or you can just go and manually update each one of them. And then if you skip trace this list, then you would select yes, and then you put the skip trace date when you skip trace it, and then where did you skip trace it from, so you can keep track of that. Once everything looks good, and you can also add a tag. Tag is additional identifying information that you could add. Typically, how I use tag is I would just use the same list name and tag name. It just gets redundant, but I do that. And then if I'm cleaning up, once I upload my list and everything looks good, and all the data that I have, then I might just go ahead and delete the tag name and then just use a tag for a different purpose. Like if I've sent direct mail to them or SMS to them, if I want to use it for that purposes, I can do that. Once this looks good, you click submit, and then you're going to go ahead and upload your list. It'll come in looking, see your import log right here, how many records you added. This percentage right here will show you the list that you added, how many new records were added from that. So after 4,000, 3,766 new were added, and then we break it down between valid, invalid. Valid and invalid mean like the property addresses that you uploaded into the system. How many of those were valid property addresses? How many of those were invalid? So we're verifying every address against USPS. So even if the address doesn't match against USPS, it will still get added to your records, but it would just show as invalid. And typically it would be invalid. For example, if you have an address of 123 Main Street and you have the property house number missing, so you just upload it as Main Street, Chicago, Illinois 60605. So it's an invalid address. It's an incomplete address, meaning so it would still upload. You can go back and edit it. And updated would be any records that you added and they were already existing in your system. And then the information was just updated with any new information that you had and any duplicates that you had in your file. So it happens, notice with the list. So when you upload a list, there would be some duplicates record. So you have the same address, 123 Main Street, appearing multiple times, and then we'll just take it out and we'll upload it only one time. So in list stacking, you would only see any property address appear only one time. So if you're uploading your list of absentee, driving for dollar, and probate, and you have that 123 Main Street in all different lists, it would just only get uploaded one time. But you would see it right here that this list, this specific address was on my absentee list, absentee motivation list, driving list, pre-foreclosure, and probate list, meaning this person right here has 4 different motivation points of absentee, driving, pre-foreclosure, and probate. So if I was gonna do some marketing, I would reach out to this person before I send any mail to this person who only had motivation of absentee motivation point. And then when you're doing, let me check out some questions. How should you handle next month when I repo list from PropStream and some properties I dropped? How do we mark those? Herman, can you, if you don't mind, just like unmuting and explaining kind of what you mean? How do we handle delete in list? So if you repo vacant list from PropStream and some properties are dropped, how do we mark those? So the ones that are dropped, if I understand correctly, so if you had 1,000 properties that let's say you put last month from vacant list, and this month you pull another list, and out of those 1,000, only 700 are still on that list. So the original list of 1,000 would still stay the same, and they would just add additional 700 records. So you could do a couple of different things. If you want to delete anything that was vacant previously and you don't want it anymore, then I would just go ahead and skip it. And filter it based on whatever filter criteria you want to apply. Let's say if you had all the lists, and that's where you could use a tag. For example, let's say this was my list. Let me see if I have anything. Yeah. So let's say these 100 records I don't need anymore. I would just go ahead and select these. Select all, and then I would just go ahead and click on delete selected. So this way, if you don't need those anymore in your system, then you could delete them. Let me know if that's what you mean.
Yeah, you have answered my question. Yeah, because when we're repulling, the same criteria, we have adds and then we have deletes. I just don't know, for properties that are dropping off from the list, like how it should be handled, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't personally delete, but if you want to delete, then you would just filter for the criteria that you want to delete for, and then just go ahead and do. And that's where you could use a tag function. So for example, I mean, you don't have to use tag, but if you want to, just if you have additional purpose of deleting. So when, let's say you upload a list of a vacant list that you pulled from PropStream last month, so you would add it to your vacant list, and then you would add a tag of, let's say, October 2022, right? And then this month, when you pull a list, you would still add it to your vacant list, name of vacant list, because it's still your vacant list, but you would add a tag of November 2022, and then you could apply a filter based on the ones that are only on your October 2022 tag, not on November 2022, and then just delete those if you want to delete them. Yeah. Or you could just do based on the date when you added them. So you could apply a filter based on, the list name that you have, a vacant list, and then you can do, date added. So you would just, select the date of October, and then just, or date updated would be October, and then just go ahead and delete those.
Do you delete, or you never delete? You just use tagging.
We don't delete. We personally don't delete, because we've noticed sometimes we would get a random lead come in, especially if we're doing inbound marketing like PPC or pay per lead. We noticed that we would get a lead come in even though we have not marketed to, but because we have the other information based on list stacking, then we will find out, okay, this property appears on my vacant list, pre-foreclosure list. So if we deleted that record and it ends up becoming a lead from a different source, then we would not have that data for that property.
Got you. Thanks.
Jorge has a question. Do you typically repull a list at the beginning of the month? Yeah, so we repull the list. Even if we're not marketing to it, we repull the list, and then we want to add as much skip rate data as possible. And the reason being, so let's say if I have this property right here, if I get a call from one of my properties, So you see this on my screen. If I'm getting a call from one of my skip trace record, it's going to pop up even if, based on this phone number, it's pulling my entire list stacking database and my entire leads database and tells me this phone number that's calling me right now, it's attached with these two properties, and it's attached with these two properties in leads and these two properties in list stacking. So I can see even before I answer a call, let's say this was not a lead, I could tell that, okay, this person is attached with 50 North Hobart Road. Oops, let me call again. So that's where you would get a lot of information if you kept the record. I mean, you can of course delete it, but let's say, I'm getting this person calling me, and if, this was a new lead for me, I would know right away, okay, this is Jan Summer, this property, and they're on my absentee motivation list and prop stream. And same thing, they own another property is 700 East 3rd Place, unit 702. So now what happens is, when I pick up the call, rather than saying, hey, hello, this is ABC company, can you tell me what property address you're calling about? It immediately goes to, hey, Jen, I see that you own a property at, 8190 Park Lane. Can you tell me a little bit about the property? So that's where you have much better, discussion, sales discussion with the lead, rather than asking them their name and property information. Then if you skip trace the data and you have it, then you will keep it in the list. So if you delete the list, they might not be on the vacant list anymore. However, they might turn up into other lists that you're pulling, and then you want to make sure you still are able to stack them. I'm curious if there's anybody on the call who's deleting the list that they have, once they pull a list. I don't see a reason to delete, but there might be some other reason that other people have to delete the list.
I'll chime in for a quick second on this.
Yeah.
So I found a best practice is just to have like a high equity list and keep that in there. That way it stores all your properties you would possibly target. And I don't put absentee or vacant as a list, since RES will sort those out.
Right.
And it's a dynamic list. I mean, that's changing every day. The vacant list today will be different than tomorrow. So I don't actually pull an absentee or vacant list. I'll pull it out for marketing purposes, but I just use the filters that's in the list stacking software to do that, and just keep all my what we call like base data, which is just a high equity list of the areas I'm targeting, just to kind of keep all the addresses in there, and then just kind of sort it that way. So all my list are permanent vexations and not things that would change. Things like leads, bankruptcies, pre-foreclosure. Those are problems that when people go into those, even if they get out of it, it's still a flag. It's still a point of vexation. So all my lists are things like that, and I wouldn't put vacant or absentee as a list personally. That's not how I do it. So
yeah, I agree. Like we're not doing vacant. Also, when we're pulling a list, which is also very similar to you, we'll pull our base list of basically anybody in our area with equity, and then we also add unknown equity, and unknown last sale days is another one that we add to our list. So that becomes our base list, and then we're comparing everything against this. Yeah. So once you add a list based on the property address and mailing address, like we'll tell you, whether it's the owner type is homeowner or absentee. So homeowner would be anybody that has mailing address and property address is the same. And any property where the mailing address is different from property address would be absentee. So again, like we're not necessarily pulling an absentee list, but yeah, we'll pull an equity list as our base, but we also pull an unknown equity and unknown last sale date. So we've seen some deals come through from that also. So these are some of the actually lists that I added to my account that we pull. So we'll pull, your 30% equity, 5 years ownership, and we just break it down. We just pull a bulk list, and then we break it down into 8 different lists. So your unknown equity, unknown years of ownership, and absentee, unknown equity, 5 years of ownership, homeowner. So we'll go ahead and pull this, and then we're vacant. It's getting updated on a monthly basis. So we'll send it to, and I've talked to a few investors consistently doing deals. And if I ask them, if they could just only pick one list, I've asked this to several people, and every single person has picked not necessarily a list, but people that are on absentee list and also vacant. That everything else being equal generally tends to be a good motivation point. I mean, again, you're not necessarily, like Mitchell said, you're not pulling an absentee list, but then you want to filter for absentee and vacant. That generally tends to be a good motivation point. Cool. Rebecca has a question. What is the best way to note that you have mailed a list, and how can I see the response rate from a specific set of direct mail? So I'll cover kind of, Rebecca, how you can note that you mailed a list. There's a couple of different ways. Let's say, you filter a list. I'm going to go ahead and select these 10 people. Then what you would do is you're going to actions. So there's a couple of different ways. Either if you're sending direct mail to them, either you can send direct mail from, again, my account is going to look a little bit different. We have some updates coming, like send to dialer, remove marketing details very soon. But let's say if you're doing direct mail from within REsimpli, so you would go ahead and click order direct mail. And then you would just go ahead and order direct mail from within REsimpli, and it would update for every single mailing address. It would update all the records that you have that you've sent direct mail to that. So it would look something like this. You would go into your marketing details. It would have marketing type would be direct mail. Because you're mailing it from REsimpli, it would also add a marketing type, whether it was postcard, yellow letter, business letter, and the campaign name, whatever campaign name that you added, and the date added would also get updated when you did that. But if you're using a third-party service for sending your direct mail, so you would do select here. You select, all the properties that you are sending direct mail to. So typically you would be exporting in order to send direct mail. So you would just click on export selected. You would go into marketing information. You want to, toggle this to yes, and then you would select direct mail. And just whatever campaign you want to call it, let's say ABC direct mail campaign. And then whenever you're sending this direct mail, let's say it's going to go out on this Friday. You don't have to do this. So what happens is based on the mailing address, so let's say you selected these 10 properties, right? However, these 10 properties, the mailing address that they have is attached with the mailing address for these 10 properties is attached with 100 properties, for example. So we would go ahead and update direct mail for all 100 properties because you've sent direct mail to those 100. I mean, essentially you send direct mail to those mailing address, 10 mailing addresses, but they're covered by 10 owners own those 100 properties. But if you're doing cold calling, then you would go ahead, come here, and then you could update this. If you are mailing at the owner level and you want to make sure every property that owner owns, you update the marketing detail, you could do that. For direct mail, it would automatically update based on the mailing address. Then once you do that, you go ahead and click export. And once you've done that, your file will get exported. You can use that. And if you come right here, the marketing detail would be updated direct mail. Because we don't have you didn't order it from REsimpli, we would not have the mailer type. Then you can see ABC campaign, and then the date of November 2nd has been added. So you don't have to use tag. Some people still like to add tag. That's just an additional, depending on how you're using tag, that's additional identifier that you can add. But if you wanted to come back and let's say, look at all the properties that you've sent direct mail to this month, so I would just do direct mail, and then I would do marketing date, and I would do, let's say, from last week to, this month. And then you would do that. It would show you those 10 properties that you send direct mail to. And then next month, if you're doing that, and then you only want to send direct mail to people that you have not mailed in, let's say, last 90 days, then you would apply a filter to include anybody that you've done direct mail to, before 90 days, and then just send direct mail to those people. And every time you do a new marketing campaign to them, this would keep getting updated for you. And one other thing I would do for direct mailers, once you've filtered your list, based on whatever criteria that you've applied. So let's say if I'm going to do list count is more than, let's say 3, I go ahead and do this. So I'll get all my list. Let's say I have 945 people. When I'm doing direct mail, I'll just click right here, remove duplicate mailing addresses. So it would, in this case, I didn't have any duplicates, but it would take out any owner that I have appearing multiple times for the properties that I have. So this I'm only sending unique, my direct mail to only unique owners. So the same owner that I have is not getting multiple direct mail pieces, if that's what you want. Some people, they like to send, if I have an owner that owns 5 properties, some people like to send 5 direct mail pieces to that owner, go to the same mailing address, but for 5 different properties, you could do that. But most of the time, you want to remove that. So instead of 945, you click right here, you only want to send to 924 people. It would, cover those 945 properties. Does that answer your question, Becca?
Sure.
John, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, will it automatically update when you get a return call? Like, will it update
Oh,
that?
yes. Yeah, so what would happen is, yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention. Thank you for pointing that out. So what would happen is, let's say if I get a call, from one of the sellers. So if I get a call from one of the sellers, let me go. So when I was getting a call from, one of my phone numbers. So let's say if I search for that phone number. So this is where it would appear. So I have the phone number. So if you notice that this is the number that I was calling from. So when you get a call from that number, you send out direct mail to your entire list. And that's where, if you have the skip trace data within REsimpli, you get a lot of really cool information. So if you get a phone number, if you get a call from this number, so what's going to happen is it would automatically add a status of attached with lead. So this phone number is attached with lead. And if you go into your leads also, if I search one of my leads, so if I search one of my leads, you'll notice that based on this phone number. So imagine I got a missed call from this property address, and then I don't have any information. This person just gave me a missed call and that's hung up. I would know right away that this phone number is attached with all of these 6 properties. So let me go ahead and create a quick lead. Again, my account is going to look a little bit different. That's an update we're working on, guys. So just please don't get confused with that. So let's say if all I have is, imagine this person gave me a missed call, and I know it came from my, let's say, direct mail probate list, and then a person just hung up the call, right? So what will happen is, based on this, it tells me this phone number I got a missed call from, and based on this phone number, I see that there's 6 matches found in list stacking. So I can see this phone number is attached with all these properties in my list stacking. So before I call this person back, what I would do is I would go ahead, in this case, I'll just click on, let's say, this is the property that this was attached with. I'd go ahead and update that. It would pull the property address and it would pull the name. So now what would happen is, when I'm calling this person back, rather than saying, hey, we got a missed call from you, can you tell me the property address that you're calling about, and can you please give me your name? It just completely shifts the conversation from that to, hey, Jan, I noticed that, you gave us a call. We missed your call, I'm sorry, but I noticed that you own a property at 50 North Hobart Road. Is that the property that you were calling about, or were you calling about like 700 East 3rd Street? So it just completely shifts the conversation based on just the phone number that you have. So you're able to pull all the information for that person. Even the drip campaigns that you have, those change from, you have no information. So instead of sending a drip campaign of, hey, we just missed a call from you, can you please text us the property address that you called us about? It just shifts from, hey, Jan, we missed a call from you about 50 North Hobart Road. We buy properties in Hobart, looking to buy, a couple of more properties in the next 30 days. Would love to talk to you about, 50 North Hobart Road. When can we connect? So it makes the message much, much more personal, rather than, asking people the property address and their name. I mean, I'm sure you guys have, had this conversation with seller when you're calling them, when they call you and you ask them, about their name and property address, and they say, oh, you're the one who sent me direct mail, so you should have my information. So now you're not having that conversation because you already have their information. So you say, oh, I see that you're in our database. We sent you a direct mail piece on this day. Can I answer any questions for you? And then you're having a much more, in-depth sale conversation. Does that answer your question, Keith?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sherrod, can I follow up on my question real quick?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So you had talked about how to mark the mail. So how can I go back and say, okay, I mailed 3,000 pieces on October 1st. How many of those are in leads versus appointments versus under contract?
Yeah, so I mean, you can track it, but the challenge that happens is, let's say if you send mail to your absentee vacant list, right? You send to those 3,000 people, depending on how often you're sending mail to. So if you send mail to them every month, what would happen is typically using the same phone number because you're tracking your campaigns based on the phone number. You're tracking your marketing campaigns based on the phone number. So if you send, let's say in the month of October, you send postcards to your absentee vacant list of 3,000. So let's you get 1% call back. So you get 30 people to call back. And then you send another mailer to the same list next month, but this time you send a letter. Unless you're using different phone numbers for each mailing, it's almost impossible to 100% track how many calls you receive. But because what would happen is some people might call you back the following month from the original postcard and not from the letter. So it's very hard to 100% accurately track that. You could, I mean, if you're using different phone number for every single campaign, then you could definitely track that. But you would go into the list section right here. And based on the list that you've added them to, so you could have the same person be on multiple lists, but we would track this KPI based on every single list that you have. So for example, if I have, this list of 2022, 30% equity, 5 years ownership, so I have 330 people. I've not sent any direct mail. I've cold called only one person, but all 330 people have sent SMS, RBM. I've had 0 conversion from that. Again, this is just, demo data. But if I had, let me go back and expand this. So if I look at another list that I have, like this one, for example, or this one, like absentee motivation list, right? I have 3,961 people. I only sent direct mail to 18, cold call 55, sent SMS to 114, and RBM 204. Now I can see, I have 7 leads, 2 appointments, 2 offer made, 3 under contract, and 4 deals that I have from this. So I can track based on the list that I'm tracking. Another way is if you go into your KPIs and you're sending out, direct mail based on the phone number, we would track right here on the probate list, how many, for example, however, all the direct mail you've sent so far, you had 21 leads, and you can click right here. You can see every single lead that came from your probate list. And you have 3 appointments, 12 offers, 11 contracts, and 9 deals. And you can click on any one of them. The challenge that happens with tracking the response rate is because you're using the same phone number for different mailings to the same list. So you might get some people call you this month, and then from the same campaign, people might call you next month. So we cannot separate that you got these calls from your October mailing and these from November mailing. I mean, I would say typically 80% of the calls that come in will come in the initial month of sending that mail out. And then, there would be 20% of the people that call you back would be from future. They will come in future. They just held on to your postcard or letter that you sent out, but would never be able to accurately, calculate what was the exact response rate. We can track exactly what your ROI is. For every dollar that you spend on marketing to that campaign, how much money you made down to the penny, because that just keeps, as you send more and more mail, more money you're spending, more revenue you're generating. So we can calculate based on that. So you can click right here. You can see all the money you spent on this and all the money that you made from this specific marketing campaign, but it's just almost impossible to track the exact response rate unless you start using different phone numbers. So you'll have, if you're mailing every month, you'll have 12 different phone numbers that you're tracking on a monthly basis. I'm not sure how much value that would add, because at the end of the day, for me personally, the most important number is the ROI for every dollar that you spend on that campaign, how much money you're making. Because even if you, let's say, hypothetically, you spend, $5,000 mailing to a campaign, you only got 1 lead, but you ended up converting that 1 lead into deal, and you ended up making 30,000 from it, right? And then you spend another 5,000 mailing to another campaign, and you got hundreds of leads, but you were not able to convert. At the end of the day, the number that really matters is for every dollar that you spend marketing, how much money did you make from that specific campaign? I'm not sure if unless somebody else has, better way of tracking the response rate accurately without using different phone numbers for every single mailing campaign. I would love to kind of hear if anybody has thoughts on that.
So unless you want to measure how many touches you need to have to get a deal, then you want to do this rotating numbers and measure how many campaigns you did on one particular address or a group of particular addresses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends. Looking at like some of the users that are consistently doing deals from direct mail, we haven't really seen anybody like using different phone numbers. I mean, people that are using different phone numbers, I can tell you, like after 5 or 6 mailings, they would get very confusing, and you would just keep adding more and more phone numbers to your database, because you're not just mailing to one list, right? You're mailing to multiple different lists. So imagine you have your absentee list, probate list, $500. If you're mailing it to everyone separately, then for every single mailing, you're creating a new phone number. I'm not 100% sure if it really adds a lot of value. For me, personally, the most important number is this number at the end of the day. Like for every dollar that I put in, how much money came back into my business. As long as this number is above 4 to 5, is above that, I'm happy. That means every dollar that I'm putting in, 4 to 5x money is coming back into the business. And then I want to keep putting more money into it as long as I can maintain that 4x to 5x number for my marketing. Yeah. And so John, you had a question. So did I hear that vacant and absentee owner is the best list? And Mitchell has a great answer. Like, you would consider like absentee and vacant as tier 2. You're not necessarily pulling for that list. That is default. You have that data about every single list that you pull. So if you add any record in REsimpli, we would automatically go in and then tell you whether it's an absentee homeowner and whether it's vacant or not. So you automatically have that. I mean, the harder it is to pull a list like pre-foreclosure, deceased, probate, then you want to stack those with absentee and vacant, and then you want to review that data on, a monthly to at a minimum quarterly basis, just to see kind of what's performing. One other thing I would do is, let's say if you get some deal converted, right? Once you send out direct mail or once you do marketing, you don't always have, you're pulling the list based on kind of what's happened with someone. So if you pull a list of somebody that's on pre-foreclosure list, and then by the time they become a lead, you find out they're also going through divorce. They're also going through bankruptcy. So what you would want to do is you want to come in right here, and you would want to add them to those specific tags or lists if you want to do that. So let's say if I know this person is going through probate, for example, and this person is also going through, eviction. So I would go ahead and add that information. What I would do is it would update my KPIs right here in the tags. And then I can review that and see which specific tag that I have in my business that's performing well. So some of the information you will have after somebody becomes a lead. So you're doing your marketing based on the data that you have. Thank you, Mitchell. So you're doing that, you're pulling your list based on the data that you have that you pulled as of that day. However, the data is based on like 2 or 3 months behind information that you have. So if something happened when you're talking to the lead, you have some more relevant information that you find out, okay, you pulled a list of probate or pre-foreclosure, but when you're actually talking to them, you find out they're going through a bankruptcy, they're going through a divorce, and there's some other life situation that's happened. Make sure you update that record with that tag or a list information that you have. So this way based on the most updated information you have, what their life situation was. So when you go back, you can look at that data based on different information that you have. If you find out somebody that you're talking to, they're like meet a certain age group of 50 plus, for example, right? You want to go ahead and you want to add that tag or list, however you want to manage that. You want to go back and add that information. So you can see, even though you did not market to them as age 50 plus, but you have that information. So next time when you're marketing to a specific group, you might notice, okay, I have 8 people in my list that, I've added a tag of 50 plus, and out of those, I've converted 4 deals. So then you would want to go back and figure out, okay, how can I get more people that meet that criteria of age 50 plus or, this absentee list, for example. and then market specifically to that list as a separate marketing campaign, and see if you can prove that, prove the data that you have on if it actually matches a marketing campaign that you're doing to them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it gets like you can do some really cool analytics. The more information you have, so you're going to have some information when you initially pull the list and you're marketing to them, but you get some really good information after they become a lead. So you want to make sure you go back and update as you have more information for that person. You go back and keep updating that information, so then you can go back and run some analytics, because the goal is, you want to do as many deals as possible, but the goal is not just to do as many deals as you possibly can, but you want to do as many deals as you possibly can by spending as little on marketing as possible. So if you can figure out that, if you're getting 10 deals a year, but you're getting your 10 deals per year, instead of sending 10,000 direct mail pieces, if you can figure out you can get the same 10 deals by only doing 2,000 direct mail pieces, or 2,000, reaching out to those 2,000 people, that's what you're trying to figure out with your marketing. Like, what is the demographic within your larger set of marketing that's really working well for you? And then as you keep narrowing down, as you keep getting more and more targeted with your marketing, that's where you're going to have huge advantage over your competitors on having a very niche marketing list, but still having some really good results. So instead of sending direct mail pieces to 10,000 people, you're only sending direct mail pieces to 2,000 people. You're having much better conversation, because you can just skip trace those 2,000 people, have all their phone numbers, so when they call you, immediately have all the information. You're having much better conversation, and now you can do direct mail to those 2,000 people. You can also call them, you can also text them, rather than just doing this vast marketing campaign. All right, Spencer, so you figured out. Yeah, so yeah, you can skip trace within REsimpli just by selecting right here and then going and clicking on skip trace. Any other questions you guys have that I might not have covered? Anything related to the topic that we covered, or anything else? Rebecca, so on the question that you were asking about direct mail, it's a little bit easier to do in a different marketing channel. So, we're working on rolling out our own dialer. So over here, you can see a little bit more in-depth record on, for example, like, how many dials do you need to make contact with someone? How many contacts you need to make to convert a lead, and how many leads you need to get a deal out of it. So it's a little bit easier, on some other marketing, but for direct mail, again, unless you use different phone numbers for every single campaign, it gets really difficult to like track that data accurately. But just, if you're using your standard postcards, your text postcards, your response rate would be about around 0.5%. But if you're using, a direct mail piece like ballpoint marketing, I've heard consistently from other investors, you would get a much higher response rate. So what we've seen is it actually ends up being cheaper. Even though you're spending a little bit more money, but you're getting double the response rate. So it's actually end up being cheaper per response rate versus sending, a lower end postcard. So when we're doing a direct mail, later this month, we're actually going to send ballpoint marketing letters in order to have low, we're spending a little bit more money upfront, but we're having lower cost per response because we're getting more people to call us back. And they generally tend to be a little bit higher quality lead, talking to other people who are using ballpoint marketing. So, and Danny has a question of the dialer in REsimpli live already. Danny, it's not live yet. We're still testing it. I just had a call with my team. The dialer and the websites will both be going live in the month of November. The website will be included free of cost in everyone's account that's using REsimpli, so you don't have to pay anything extra. The dialer will be pay per user. If you want to use it, it's an additional cost. If not, then you don't have to use it. But it's every plan will have access at the same cost to add dialer to their account. But we're finishing up our testing right now. And then as soon as we're done, we'll make it live for everyone. So any other questions, guys, that I can help you guys with? This was a great call, by the way. Thank you, everyone, for being super engaged. This was really good. is a dialer. David has a question. Is a dialer through PC or phone? David, the dialer initially is going to be through PC. So you just click right here, click call, and then it'll just start calling from right here. So you can just click call, and then it'll just start calling those records. And it'll pull all the information from list stacking. And then all the calls will be recorded, text and everything will be recorded within the system. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being so engaged on the call. Damon has a question. Is there a way to send mass emails? Damon, you can send mass emails to your buyers list right now, but not for prospecting purposes. Again, like cold emails, you want to make sure like we only allow mass emails to people that have sort of like signed up to be receive emails from you, which would be your typically your buyers, but not to call cold prospects that you have. You can send one-off emails through to your leads. Can you pull agent contact information? Not sure what you mean. Can you explain that a little bit more? If you want to unmute yourself and let me know what you mean by that question.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Damon.
Oh, how you doing? What I mean was, can you retrieve the agent's email and the number to reach the agent to contact them?
You cannot retrieve that in the system, but if you have data from MLS, then you can upload it right here. And then you can send out bulk email to your agent. So you would go ahead and upload it right here in the system. So you would go ahead and add your buyer or agent information. You can also upload it right here. You can also bulk upload list of your agents by importing a list. So if you have a list from MLS, you would, get the name, email, phone number. Then you can go ahead and select those people, and then click and send them bulk email from the system. So I've seen some teams, some companies do that, where they would have lists of local agents in their market, and then send an email just as for prospecting purposes. Again, agents and buyers are going to be more receptive of receiving emails, and you would have much better quality emails than skip tracing emails of homeowners. So what you would do is you would get the list of these people, and then you would get their phone number, their agent's phone number and email, and then you can go ahead and click send bulk email, and then you use them as a prospect in saying, hey, I understand you're a local agent in Chicago, Illinois. I would, I'm a cash buyer. I would love to buy a property. If you have anything that you have for sale, and then you can help me with the listing. So I've seen some teams use that and create a separate tracking campaign in order to track the KPIs from that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Any other questions, guys? All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for the call. I'll see you guys next week, Tuesday. Thank you. Have a great week.